Good day, class. Today we're going to be discussing some of the differences between the United States and the United Kingdom. Some of these differences are going to be included laws and engineering, respectively. Now, take a minute to imagine, if you can, a parallel universe where things are similar, but they're different. And you would be driving on the opposite side of the road, speaking English but a different dialect, with different colloquialisms or slang and different gestures. You would have different laws, different ethics. And speaking of ethics, we can begin with ethics. And your ethics come in two different categories, in my opinion, here. And we're going to say business and personal. That being said, with business, there's a lack of anti-monopoly laws like we have in the United States. You'll experience this with companies like BT, British Telecom, and in that aspect, you'll be experiencing maybe a little bit of a lower quality of customer service and harder time getting things scheduled for maintenance to be done with your systems. And not even just that so much, but there are bank holidays, which pretty much all businesses are going to take off, and that limits your availability of businesses. Now, as a side note for a quick second, if you're over there with the military like I was, stationed in 2008, you might get a handy book like this that's going to sort of explain to you the local area and how things are. A beginner's guide. So for you military individuals, and of course there's that. For our civilians, you can always look up a guide, go from there. It'll tell you when the bank holidays are and what's going on. Back to business. Like I said, there's bank holidays, stuff like that. That closes that out. Really, personal ethics are what we're going to be moving on to, and that would involve close quarters contact. People, when they speak to you in public, are going to be more close like this. They'll be speaking to you very, very closely. While they are more private in their life, they, like I said, they have that close contact, and they'll joke about it with new Americans sometimes and say, "Oh, you have the American bubble." So overcoming the bubble is a big thing, you know, because you and I, in America, we would like to have space between us. Gestures, such as the backwards peace sign here. This is a very offensive thing in Britain. That means the same thing as our middle finger. You know, essentially it's just us saying F you to them, and they don't understand that we don't know. So if we're out in public and, you know, God forbid we come across a pub, somebody's drunk, they can start a fight. Now, with that said, moving on to legal. The legality of things in the UK are a little bit different. They have anti-gun laws and we don't, for the most part. They can't own firearms, really. And with that said, that makes it easier for burglaries to occur. They can't really defend their home very well. There's more knife crime, because knives, while frowned upon, aren't banned, so people have them. There's certain types of knives that will get you arrested. You can't ban them. When it all boils down to it, if you choose to have firearms when you go over there, if you get stationed on RAF base, there are armories there that you can keep your weapon in, shoot your weapon on the base shooting range. I don't have any recommendations for the civilians in the course. I don't know, but I can tell you that the armories are the only places I've known to be able to keep firearm. And it all boils down to assaults in the UK when it comes to burglaries, because more likely you probably will commit one and not even realize it, and you can be countersued by the burglar in question for that, because verbal and aggravated assault are two main categories in the UK, and they apply to burglars as well. Like I said, they can countersue you. And HG.org, their guides to assault law, states that assault does not require actual contact with the intended victim, but immediate threat of forceful contact. Even if the perpetrator had no actual ability to carry out this threat, it's still viable. That's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? The legal definition of assault in the UK is pretty much the same exact thing. That's what HG.org states to you about the legal definition of assault in the UK. Moving on to crime reference numbers. They're used in the UK to track crime by the local constable, who will issue you one, and they have a negative side. My neighbor stated that it's been known to lower property values. My neighbor in the UK, mind you. Lower property values, and most of them go unsolved, at least in Suffolk. Now, www.direct.gov.uk stated this about crime reference numbers. Their direct statement is, whether you reported an emergency or non-emergency, you'll have to give a statement to the police, and this means that you will have to tell an officer what happened to you or what you saw. They may ask you questions, might ask you to repeat yourself to make sure that the statement is accurate and as detailed as possible. When you finish giving a statement, the police will usually read it back to you to make sure that your statement matches theirs, their written account, your verbal statement matches their written account. If you agree, you'll sign the statement and get a crime reference number. If you want to contact the police about the same incident, in the future you'll need to keep that reference number in a safe place. If you're the victim of a theft, you'll need this number when you tell the insurance company making your claim. And a side note, in the UK, instead of 911, you'd be using 999 to report emergencies, and 101 instead of 311 for non-emergencies. Now we can move on to something different. Speed cameras. While they're not exclusive to the UK, and we do have them in the US, they are more common in the UK. UK is going to be using mostly your photo optic cameras versus our US laser GPS style cameras. We do have photo optic cameras, but they're mainly in Maryland and DC. And given that kind of information there about cameras and where they're at geographically, we can move on into the engineering differences. Commercially, your UK buildings, they share walls for the most part. They have thatched or clap tile style roofs. Personal experience on a clap tile roof, very bad, very slippery and very rattly. In the US, though, of course, most of you may know that we're going to be using nailed tiles instead of clap together tiles, and our roofs are tarred on, not thatched. Roads are going to be narrow in the UK. Garages will be smaller, parking garages will be smaller. If you have a Ford Excursion or maybe a Hummer H3, H2, would not advise taking it over there. I had a very compact SUV, Ford Explorer Sport, and it barely fit in a parking garage in Cambridge. Their electrical system would be a UK 220 versus our US 110 standard. So please, whatever you do, you take your computer over there, you have a desktop, look on the back of it, the power supply, make sure that it has a switch. If it has a switch, make sure you flip that one. I did not do that. I had a very awesome surprise. It sounded just like a shotgun, but it was my power supply exploding and the bearings flying around in there. Just remember to do that. Switch the power. When it comes down to your domestic engineering, you have oil heating radiators, or radiators they call them. Much more common in the UK due to cost, limited natural gas, and they're more eco-friendly. Fresh air duct systems instead of central AC usually. It is just that way because it doesn't really get that hot. It gets a little cold, but it's not that hot over there. And now that we've discussed these differences, we're going to move on to our conclusion, which is today I've given you many examples about the differences between the US and the UK. And I told you about their ethical differences, the legal differences, and the engineering differences. And these differences, while not altogether overwhelming, can be a challenge to new arrivals from the US, which can sometimes lead to culture shock. And with that said, now that I've given you this information, perhaps you won't suffer the same amount of culture shock.